Hello, I'm Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of Winona. 100 years ago, the building that I'm standing in front of was 13 years old. People came from all around to see the grandeur of this large, handsome Winona County Courthouse.
The courthouse is an integral part of our city. It sits tall and proud next to the newer buildings surrounding it. A trophy from the past amidst our beautiful river town.
Today it still sits impressively in the center of our city, considered by some to be Winona's treasure and by others a white elephant. Let's take a close look at this building and find out what makes this building so special.
The building was designed by Charles G. Mayberry with the help of his son Jefferson in 1888. Mayberry came to Winona in 1856 from New York with his wife Rebecca. The two of them had 10 children. Mayberry was Winona's premier architect during that era. He was responsible for many of Winona's grand buildings. In the 1860s, he designed all of Winona's school buildings: Central Grade School, Jackson School, Kosciuszko School, Lincoln School, Washington School, and Madison and Jefferson schools, none of which are still standing. He also designed Winona Normal School, the precursor to Winona State University, which sat in the middle of Johnson Street where Sampson Hall presently stands. He designed the Winona High School building, which stood on Broadway and Washington Street in 1888, the same year he designed the courthouse. If you look at pictures of each, you see many similarities. In 1891, he was one of the primary architects for the infamous post office, which graced our city in the corner of Main and 4th Streets until it was torn down in the early 1960s. Mayberry also designed several churches in town, two of which are St. Martin's Church on Broadway and St. Stanislaus Church on East 4th Street. Fortunately for us, this magnificent building still graces our East End neighborhood. Several of the homes designed by Mayberry are the Olson home near Wyndham Park and the Thompson home on Franklin and 7th Streets. The similarities in all these structures are remarkable. The turrets, the arched windows, the steeples, the towers, and the spires, all designed by Winona's own architect, Charles G. Mayberry. The original courthouse sat between the Huff House Hotel and the Winona Carriage Works. Behind it sat the Stone City Jail. The Huff House Hotel was torn down to make way for the Hotel Winona in 1889. Across the street from the hotel, where the Historical Society now stands, was the stagecoach station and stables. The stone jail sat alongside the new courthouse until 1913, when a new jail was erected across the street. The new Winona County Courthouse was dedicated on September 17, 1889. It cost $125,000 to construct. At that time, the power poles stood tall with their glass insulators. Street lights hung from a wire in the center of the intersection, and automobiles were not even heard of. 171 West 3rd Street is the main entrance of the building, and it was and still is designed to hold the county administrative offices. In 1889, it held offices for the county treasurer, the city auditor, the county commissioner, the superintendent of schools, the register of deeds, the probate judge, and the clerk of court. It held one large courtroom, the judge's chambers, and 5 vaults that contain the city's records. Let's go in and find out what has happened to the building since that time and take a tour of it as it looks today in January of 2001. Upon entering, we glance upwards to an open 4-floor metal stairway. One floor is below us. Glancing down from the top floor, we see an impressive array of stained glass windows. These prismed wonders originally looked upon only 2 floors. The basement and the top floor were not used then for offices, and the 4th floor did not exist. In 1973, the courthouse was extensively remodeled. A new floor was added, and 19,000 square feet grew to 39,000 square feet. Dr. Greg Gout, Associate Professor of History at St. Mary's University, has studied the courthouse renovation issue and tells us how this came about.
1956 is really where it started, and at that point, the courthouse was one of the issues, but also at that time the old federal post office and courthouse building was still in existence at 4th and Main. And a campaign was organized by the Chamber of Commerce at that point to replace both of those buildings with a combined federal county office building. And they succeeded partway. They got the federal government to come up with the money for a new post office, which is the post office we now have in Central Park. But the federal government didn't want to go along with the combined idea. So after that, the Chamber of Commerce went to the county commissioners and asked them to do a referendum to build a new courthouse. And the county commissioners went along with that, and they had a referendum in 1958, but it failed. And so they tried again in 1960, and that referendum failed too. These were bond referendums to get the voters to approve funding for a new courthouse. Then they waited a little bit, and in 1967, they had a third bond referendum trying to get money for a new courthouse, and that failed too. It was voted down all 3 times by the voters. And of course, the issue became more and more controversial as we went along, and by 1967, the whole issue of urban renewal was very big in Winona, et cetera. And then the county commissioners, having lost 3 referendum, decided on a new tactic. They came up with a plan by which they could hopefully build a new courthouse without a bond referendum, and that was to build a courthouse in 3 stages out of their operating funds and out of their building fund budget. And then when they got to the 3rd stage, they'd tear down the old courthouse. And by that time, a citizens movement had grown up in Winona trying to save the courthouse, and they did a variety of tactics. They picketed and petitioned, and they wrote a song and went to meetings and applied to get the courthouse in the National Registry of Historic Places, which happened in December of 1970. They even had a lawsuit trying to stop the county commissioners from their plan, which they lost. But although they lost the lawsuit, after that time, this was in the spring of 1971, the county commissioners decided to change their mind. And they decided then to think about renovating the existing courthouse, which they eventually did. And then finally, there was a bond referendum about that. This was the 4th bond referendum now, and to the surprise of everyone, it passed overwhelmingly.
Why did they want to destroy these 2 buildings and build
there was a feeling among, I think, the business community and the politicians at that time that those buildings from the 19th century, and of course the courthouse was built in 1888, the post office 2 years later, were old-fashioned, out-of-date, obsolete buildings, and that they gave the wrong message to the outside world about Winona. They wanted Winona to look modern, advanced, and so they wanted those older buildings replaced by new, modern-looking buildings. I mean, for example, the post office that was actually built eventually in Central Park, nice, clean lines and modern sort of building.
What do you suppose motivated the citizens' movement back in the 50s to save the courthouse?
Well, I think there was 2 things that grew, and one was a basic notion that it was important for Winona, or really any place, to retain some historic links with its past. And the courthouse was kind of a special building in that respect, because it was built in 1888 when Winona was really in its kind of boom phase, and it was this dynamic river city, and it built this great courthouse to really kind of show off that it was a great kind of coming city. And so there was, I think part of the motivation was that it was a bad idea for any society to break off too many links with the past. The courthouse is full of handcrafted details, beautiful carved woodwork on the inside, the doors, etc., the beautiful stained glass windows throughout, and the stone carvings that are detailed all through. When you look at a building like the courthouse, you know that it was actually crafted by human hands, whereas modern architecture is really quite the opposite. It looks like it was made by a machine. It's kind of designed to look like a machine. And so people were saying that they like that. They like that sort of the humanness of that architecture as opposed to modern architecture. And I think that was the second thing that motivated people very strongly, and continues to.
The importance of this building to the citizens of Winona is expressed by Pam Wolf, the maintenance director, who oversees the care of the Winona County Courthouse.
I think it's a very grand building. It's a beautiful building. I can still just look at the stained glass windows and just be amazed at the beauty in that, the woodwork in it. Like every time I walk around and look at it, I find something else. When I first found the gargoyles on the outside, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. But it's just, there's so many unique parts of this whole building.
The exterior of the courthouse was preserved and cleaned up, because actually by that time it was completely blackened by soot, so the exterior was cleaned up. But the interior was changed dramatically. It wasn't really a restoration, it was more of a renovation. And the existing 3-floor structure was changed to 5 floors in order to provide more floor space.
The 5th or top floor of the courthouse currently is designed to house the county administration offices and the commissioner's office. It includes small offices for law clerks, training rooms, and a conference room. Originally, it was just an attic used to store wood to be used in the fireplaces on the floors below. The wood paneling on this floor was added and is a beautiful example of what an excellent job was done in matching the original red oak throughout the other floors in the building.
One of my maintenance workers is real good with woodwork, and so he's redone some of the areas in here to make them look back to the original. And when he makes furniture for this building, he does it in the same color, wood color, as this building.
The 4th floor was totally added during the renovation and is designed to house court services. From one of the offices on this floor, in the rounded tower section of the building, we see a view of the city that any Winonan would love to have. We see the bluffs on the Wisconsin side of the river through the interstate bridge. We can glance up the Mississippi River, through the west side of town, all the way across the city, and to the bluffs on the Minnesota side of the river. As we gaze up from this room, we see a part of the outside of the building that only a few people realize is even there. 2 gargoyles stretching their necks out of the building, appearing as if they're trying to escape. There were 2 identical courtrooms installed on this floor. One is still intact with its rounded false ceiling. Fluorescent lights beam down from a donut hole opening over the judge's bench, the court recorder's desk, the witness box, the lawyer's tables, and the audience viewing area. Sprinkler heads appear secure in the false ceiling. But what happens if this false ceiling becomes dislodged from the original beam ceiling that is hidden behind it and breaks the sprinkler heads that are placed there for safety? Pam, now I understand that the damage that the courthouse is experiencing right now all began in this room.
Yes, it is. The ceiling came down. If you look up, you can see where the ceiling was attached, was a drop ceiling. And when it came down, it took 4 of the sprinkler heads off. And the sprinklers started filling the room with water. And we judged it at 3 feet of water in the courtroom before it finally gave way and started going out into the hallway and down.
Now, I understand you got a call that there was an alarm going off. Is that how you initially found out about that?
Correct. It was Sunday morning, September 2nd, I think it was. And the phone, it was like a 3 o'clock in the morning phone call. And my daughter and I came in to check it out and see what was going on. And I had told the alarm company to dispatch the fire department at the same time. And they came in. They were just coming in the door just as we arrived. And we were looking for smoke, because the fire company, so you figure, okay, it's got to be smoking.
So you got the call at 3 that the alarm was going off. And
Correct.
then what time did you meet the fire department here?
It takes me about 4 minutes. I got all the green lights that night, I think. And so it was about 4 to 5 minutes when we arrived. And we came in and we couldn't smell or see anything. And then pretty soon we heard, about that time is when the water let loose, where it broke loose in here. And we could hear it coming, so we went downstairs, turned off the main, and got the water stopped. But right now I can't remember exactly how many thousands of gallons they said that were going through here at that time. The elevator company said there was 6 foot of water in the elevator shaft at one point.
How long did the water actually run?
19 minutes is what we have it broke down. Between the fire department and the alarm company, it was 19 minutes.
So then there was 3 feet of water in this room, correct?
At one point.
At one point.
Prior to us finding it, there were 3 feet of water in here. by the time we had arrived here, it had gone down because it had broken loose through the doors and started going out through the building.
So then over the weekend, the water seeped down into the other levels down below?
Right.
Okay, and that's what caused all the damage below us? Right?
Correct.
The 2 courtrooms on this floor did not exist prior to the 1970s renovation. The ceiling above, with its painted plaster and heavy beams, actually hung over a single courtroom 28 feet below. Holes were punctured through the plaster here to hang the sprinkler system and the false ceiling. Behind each of the courtrooms are the judges' chambers, currently Judge Thompson's and Judge Johnson's. These small, lovely offices give us a taste of the handcrafted beauty this building offers. The heavy hand-carved red oak trim that frames the arched stained glass windows is magnificent, as are the windows themselves. Each judge has 3 of these windows to view, all to his or herself, as the public is not allowed in these chambers. The view of these windows on the outside of the building is almost obscured by the glass that was installed over them in the 1970s. These particular windows on the 4th floor actually ran down to the 3rd floor before 1970. Notice how the floor comes up to the row of wooden balls at the base of the window. On the floor below, we see the top of the window and the wood framing touch the ceiling without a finished edge. These windows are actually the original bottom of the arched stained glass windows on the floor above. There are 8 of these windows that would have measured approximately 15 feet high before the renovation and would have surrounded one side of the large courtroom below.
Do you have any idea how many stained glass windows there are in this building?
We have approximately 100 stained glass windows, 20 of them being in areas that are accessible to the public. What I've been told is it's recommended you start at the 5th floor, and I found this to be true. Start at the 5th floor and go down the stairways, and you'll see the beauty in the stained glass windows and beauty in a lot of the different areas of the courthouse.
Most of the 100 stained glass windows are hidden in the small offices surrounding the outside walls of the building, and most of them are small rectangular transom windows over a long glass window below. In the 70s renovation, thankfully, none of them were removed. However, plastic fluorescent light fixtures, drop ceilings, and 4x4 metal frame light fixtures were hung in front of them, somewhat masking their full beauty. Behind the double doors on the 3rd floor is the large courtroom where the current Honorable Judge Collins presides. This room is directly below the courtroom on the 4th floor where the sprinkler heads broke, consequently damaging the ceiling as well. The joists and beams of the floor that was added in the 70s have since dried out. Beyond the courtroom lies the judge's chambers with a private restroom directly across the entrance to the room. This handsome corner room is surrounded by beautiful wood-carved bookshelves on 2 sides and 4 of the stained glass transomed windows on the opposite side. A fireplace sits in the corner. This fireplace is one of 5 on the 3rd floor. This one being full painted, slate, etched, and a diamond shape cut out to highlight a very lovely ceramic tile. In 4 of the exterior rooms on this floor are the other 4 fireplaces. Notice how the carved wood design surrounding the tile is the same, only the tiles change. In one room is a tiny brown square ceramic tile surrounding the firebox. A second fireplace has a large brown square tile around it. Another has a chartreuse green rectangular tile around it, and a 4th fireplace contains a turquoise blue rectangular tile. In the wood-carved red oak molding around the tile, all have the small squares above and the Romanesque columns on the side. Each is in a room with a stained glass window that picks up the color that is featured in the fireplace. Notice the lovely turquoise glass in these arched windows reflecting the turquoise tile in the fireplace. The floor below is currently the 2nd floor of the courthouse and would have been the main floor of the 2 floors used during the original era of the building. Upon entering 171 West 3rd then, you would have come up a 9-foot wide staircase with a fabulous wood-carved railing on either side. This railing currently stands in the entrance of the Winona Historical Society. You would have entered a 16-foot wide hall that ran from one end of the building to the other. You may have stopped by one of the windows on the right to conduct your financial business with Audrey Saraki, the county treasurer. During the 70s remodeling, the hall was narrowed to 1/2 its size, and metal cages were added to close off the openings. The mosaic tile floor was glued over with carpet. This floor has 5 fireplaces as well as the floor above. Again, all the wood molding surrounding the tile is identical, only in a completely different design than the floor above. Again, the stained glass windows in the room matches the color of the tile in the fireplace. Notice the deep ruby red jewels in this fabulous stained glass window, which happens to be in the same room as the deep red tiled fireplace. This room also contains 2 other awesome stained glass windows with red glass, framed in the signature Courthouse red oak trim. The ceiling on this floor is 16 feet high, and the original supporting walls are 5 feet thick. The walls are richly paneled in red oak, and hand-carved trim adds artistic detail throughout. There were originally 5 vaults on this floor. The vault doors have never been touched and are still in their original state, with the fancy Victorian designs on the front and their still working lock system on the back. We are going to enter the county auditor's vault, which received no damage from the broken sprinkler heads.
It looks like it's one of the only rooms that's still intact to the way it was built in 1888. I see that the plaster walls are still here, and it looks like these file systems are from the original 1888 era. Is that correct?
I'm not sure totally about the file system, but the room is intact. It's a vault, and it's, you can see that the covers on the windows protect it from the outside, and it is intact as far as the walls being the original plaster. If the files are still at the original, they're pretty old, but if not, they're still significantly old because you can tell by the wood on the ladder and how it rolls.
And this is one room that the public never sees, isn't it?
Correct.
What room is this?
This is an auditor's file room. They keep files of for elections, county property changes, that type of items are kept in here. The rollers are put on there for the books. The size of the books make it almost impossible to pull them out without that. And this room and also the recorder's office has a vault that has the same roller system for the books.
Okay, and we're standing over what looks like a spiral staircase, which is really intriguing. What is at the bottom of these stairs?
At the bottom of the stairs is another vault that's also can be locked off from this. At the bottom of the stairwell, there's a door that slides that can be locked to keep you from going up or down.
This spiral staircase leads to the bottom of the auditor's vault, which is on the first floor level. This room was originally part of the basement, which only held the boiler and storage rooms. Today it holds other small offices as well.
It's another vault down there, large vault.
So these 2 rooms, the one up here and the one down below, would be the auditor's records?
Correct.
Okay.
Even though the interior of the building was changed so dramatically in the 70s, much of its inside character remains the same. The outside of the building, however, was not changed, only enhanced. 80 years of soot had gathered on it up to 1970, so much so that growing up in Winona, I always thought the building was made of gray stone. We can see clearly now that the building is made up of a blend of 2 handsome stones. It is built of Dresbach buff sandstone with trimmings of Lake Superior brownstone. The main tower rises to a height of 136 feet. The main entrance has a large brownstone arch with a medallion on either side of it, which stands for law and justice. Faces and gargoyles are hidden throughout the intricate and beautifully carved sandstone. Wherever you look, you see an interesting artistic shape or form. The outside of the building has become more important to the citizens of Winona than the inside because of its quality and grandeur.
There is no doubt that the Winona County Courthouse is the most unique and historic building in our community. The stately nature of it, standing alone in its artistic splendor, represents a significant tie to our heritage in Winona. I'm Joyce Woodworth at the Winona County Courthouse. Please join me next week on my next show. Till then, enjoy the Spirit of Winona.